Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is ChessRabbitt. We're about to see a game that I played in early 1993. I was rated in this, this is from the Wayne County Open, January 9th, 1993, where I was rated 914. First round of the Open, and I go up against an expert player rated 2128. Now, if the rating difference between 2128 and 914, of course, is is greater than 914. So the rating difference between us was like 1,000 or something, which is a lot greater than my actual rating. Anyway, I gave this uh, person a good run, and I missed the win. And after the game, the guy told me if I had played that move, which I was actually thinking about, if I had played that move, that he would have resigned because he would have been a rook down. And well, I just didn't pull the trigger. I actually thought about it. I analyzed the position, but then I went with another move. We will get to that move when we get there. But for right now, we'll be looking at the game and where this this is I've been playing chess for now for about 2 years, and I settled on a move d4 as my opening as white. I haven't settled on the move 1e6 yet, so later on in the tournament you will see me playing mostly. If a person played e4, that I would play at the actual, and I didn't even know this until recently that I was playing the Rui Lopez Berlin defense, which is like the defense all the rage now. But back then is what I was playing because that's what I was studying was the Berlin, the Rui Lopez Berlin. So, and I would open with e4. I would challenge e4 with e5 anyway. Not too much with the Sicilian or anything, but the 1e6 thing came a little later than that. But it was um it was pretty interesting to find that out, that I actually played the Berlin, which is now all the rage because of Kramnik's and Kasparov 2000, or Kasparov Kramnik 2000. So anyway, Kasparov didn't even win a game in his world championship match. So I find that a funny match myself. I'll probably be looking at a couple of those games, so that I think it's some sort of a funny thing. I'm also going to be looking at a lot of games of Anatoly Karpov, the Rodney Dangerfield of chess. So we'll be exploring some of those games. Anyway, this is my game against a player. His name is Cheheveb. It's spelled Cheheveb. Um, he's of Middle Eastern descent, and I don't know how to pronounce the name, quite frankly. So anyway, that is it. So we're going to be going now, and I'm going to be showing you some of the key squares. One of the key squares in this game, of course, is this square right here, d5, which is pretty interesting. So we're going with the game. d4, c5. Already, I'm sort of out of book here. I didn't know what to make of this move, c5, then. And like I said, I've only been playing chess for a couple of years, and I didn't know whether to take or not take or whatever. So of course now today I would take this pawn without hesitation and just I would probably take this pawn and then throw it up to c6 and let him regain his pawn back. But back then I didn't know what to do, so I just pretty much ignored it and went e3. d5, c4. Now we're pretty much getting to a standard play here. Well, I ignored this pawn sacrifice. Now we're getting into standard play. C takes d4, e takes d4, d takes c4, knight f3. I could have taken this right away, but I didn't want to. I could have taken this pawn back right away, but I decided to develop some pieces first. Well, mainly because of the I was still, like I said, I was still new to chess, and the developed knights before bishop thing was entering my mind, so I developed the knight first, and actually to protect this pawn a little more, sort of the Nimzovich over protection, protect this pawn 30 times. But anyway, that's probably what I was doing. I really don't remember. I mean, it's been over 20 years ago. I don't know. I only remember the one move where I should have played. All the rest of the game, I pretty don't know what I was thinking about anymore. Knight f6, opponent's developing. Bishop takes c4, getting the pawn back, e6, my famous e6 move. Well, I'm gonna make it famous one of these days. One of these days, 100 years from now, Masters will be looking at it and say, you know, this guy who was rated, I don't know, couldn't play, but he made his great defense of, 1e6, play 1e6 all the time. Yeah, great move. Or then again, they may say, well, that's why he wasn't a grandmaster because he kept playing 1e6. He didn't know what he was doing. Either way, I don't know. Anyway, that's my 1e6 move. But now, like I said, that move 1e6 usually comes into play on almost all defensive that I have ever seen that don't start off 1e5. 1e6 is usually always there, whether you put the bishop on the other side of the pawn chain or not. 1e6 is usually the move played all the time, so I just decided to eliminate all the rest of the stuff before and just play 1e6. Kind of interested in me, I don't know. Anyway, I castled bishop e7. My opponent is also preparing to castle, clearing off his back rank. Knight c3, knight b4 bishops. He castled. Rook e1, getting the half open file. And quite incidentally, this is now the last book move, so we're my opponent here plays a move that's out of book, so we're pretty much on our own. I've been pretty much thinking on my own now for the last since move one. Like I said, that c5 move really. So I don't follow book moves anyway. I pretty much just develop pieces and things like that. And I usually go pretty deep into a book. And so if there are any opening traps and things like that, you guys probably could get me in them pretty easily because I don't study that kind of stuff. I just play the ideas behind the chess openings. Anyway, queen c7, attacking the bishop. Queen d3, protecting the bishop. Probably another alternative move probably could have been queen e2 to come here, and then my opponent would probably just finish his developing and attacking this pawn here. But yeah, queen e2 it could be also a nice developing move also. So either one of those moves would have been good. Rook d8, getting to the open file. Now, right about here, I started thinking about this square right here, d5, because this isolated pawn here, I really didn't want this here, and I want to push it. So I figured if I could push this, he would have two pieces on this square, and I would have one, two, I would have two pieces on the square. So I started thinking about ways to, I would have three pieces on the square, the bishop, the knight, and the queen, and he only had a, and he has three pieces on it, the pawn, the knight, and the rook now. I started thinking of ways to push this pawn, getting rid of this isolated d pawn. Because I really don't know how to play against isolated d. I'm not playing against the pawn anyway. I'm with the pawn, but I want to get rid of this pawn. So I started thinking of ways to push this pawn on d5 and exchange a lot of pieces here on this square. I got this idea from Jeremy Silma's How to Reaccess Your Chess, and there's a chapter in there that talks about a square, how sometimes a single game can revolve around a whole square, and that's what this game does. This game revolves around this d5 square, and a lot of play up to a certain point revolves around this d5 square. So my play right now is revolving around this d5 square, pretty much. That's my whole centralized. So anytime you see me move a piece or something, it has to do with this d5 square. Whether it's moving a piece out of the way so another piece can get to this d5 square. So yeah, my whole philosophy of this game right now is focused on this d5 square. Bishop e3. Right now, just protecting the pawn, but it's connecting these rooks so I can bring this rook over to to either this open file here or the half open file here to support d5. a6. Obviously, my opponent is getting ready to play b5 to scatter this bishop, so a little prophylactic here, a little prophylactic move here. Bishop b3, knight c6, again attacking this square, but I'm not really too much worried about the d4 square right now. Like I said, I always want to push to d5, so my whole plan is really to revolve around the d5 square, not so much this square. Also with this move, knight c6, my opponent could jump into the square b4 and attack the queen. So in order to prevent this jump, I play a3, another prophylactic move. So I played 2 prophylactic moves in a row so far. So, you know, even though I'd only started playing chess a couple years, I read this chess book, How to Read Excessive Chess. I pretty much beginning to know how my opponent is thinking in the game. And this guy's rated 21-28, like I said. So I've always been a somewhat strong player, but it's just, you know, I've always been somewhat strong player, and I have plans and things like that. But it's just somewhere along the line, I'm going to hang a piece, blunder a piece, and so that's why sometimes I can win against 2,000 rated players, and sometimes I can, and I can also lose against 900 rated players and win against them and lose against them. So it really just all depends. I have no idea what my real chess strength is. To tell you the truth, probably somewhere around 1,500, something like that. But for the most part, yeah, I can beat almost just about anybody, and I can lose against almost just about anybody. Probably because I play a lot of computers, so I have to, you know, I that's how I discovered chess. Really was through the computer, so that's how I probably had a lot of this defensive and prophylactic thinking because I play computers, and computers would always make moves like this, so I would try to prevent them from making those moves. So that's probably where I get my defensive style from. I play in computers. B5, rook a c8. Only thing I'm doing here is I'm not. I probably could have put this rook here, but I've decided maybe I should put this rook, the e rook, on this square. So the rook on this square, oops, didn't go far enough. The rook on this square on c1 is actually eyeing the bishop. I mean, it's actually eyeing the queen right here. That's on c7. Um, so that's my thinking here. So if I push this pawn up to d5, and after we do all these trades of the, you know, I push the pawn and pawn takes, knight takes, bishop takes, this will have it discovered on the queen. You know, that was my thinking. So we shall see. Bishop b7. So far, so good. So now I will make my point, and all my plays so far revolved around the d5 square. Like I said, once we do all these trades here, this rook will have a discovered attack on the queen. So why not? So I pushed the d5 square. And like I said, all my play revolved around this d5 square anyway. My opponent went queen d7. He saw that all those trades could happen and his queen be on the other side. So he decided to put some more reinforcements on the d5 square, leading with his queen. The computer suggests better would have been knight a5, then go knight takes b5, which I wouldn't do because I've been, like I said, all my plans have been focusing on the d5 square. So why would I take this? You know, that's pretty much a computer move. I probably wouldn't have done it. But as you can see, by taking this pawn here, you're grabbing a pawn, and also you're doing a discovered attack on the queen here. And plus the knight is attacking the queen also. So you have 2 pieces on that queen right there. Queen d7, knight c5. This knight is being protected by the rook here, so I guess that's playable. I probably wouldn't have done that either. Knight takes b3, queen takes b3, bishop takes d5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, e5. Putting a knight on the central square and attacking the queen. That's pretty much a computer variation. I probably wouldn't have done any of that, so I don't know. Anyway, my opponent, instead of going knight a5, went bishop d3. So I put my other rook on the other side of the queen, and also reinforcing this d5 square here. The computer suggests that there are better ways to keep up the pressure. So instead of rook e d1, that I should have played bishop b6, which is interesting that the computer suggests this move now, and later on you will see what I'm talking about. Anyway, if you go on e takes d5, rook c d1, rook e8. Still keeping a lot of pressure on this D pawn. The queen is on the D pawn, the rook is on the D pawn, the knight is on the D pawn, and this bishop is on the D pawn. So we still have a lot of attackers on this D pawn here. So like I said, the square D5 becomes very important in this game. E takes D5, releasing the pressure on the opponent. Again, this computer suggests knight A5, bishop E2 because he's attacking bishop A2 because he's attacking the bishop with his queen. I mean with his knight. Knight C4, bishop takes C4, C takes D4, queen takes C4, knight takes D5, bishop D3. And like I said, a lot of the play, even in some of the variations that the computer comes up with and some of the variations that I come up with, all revolves around this D5 square. Anyway, since we're both pretty much beginning to exchange on D5 now, bishop takes D5. I probably, in hindsight, shouldn't have led with my bishop like that. Like I said, I've only been in the game a couple of years. And if anything, instead of leading with the bishop, probably more likely should have led with the knight, encouraging this knight trade. So at the end of it, it would have looked something like this, where now this bishop could have a discovered attack on this king here with a check and probably could win a rook on this file here. So that was the pretty much what I was thinking. If not D5, then probably queen takes, bishop takes, knight A5, bishop takes D7, rook takes D1, rook takes D1, knight takes D7, and we pretty much have an even game. So I led with the bishop, knight takes D5, so my opponent sort of is playing into my hands here a little bit. Knight takes D5, knight A5. Now we come to the point, well, yeah, now we come to the point in the game where there's a very good move here. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to let you guys see if you guys can figure it out. So pause the video and see if you can find the good move. Okay, now that you're back, you paused the video, you looked at the position. The move I was thinking about playing and I didn't play was, well, I got to a certain point and I couldn't find a continuation, and I will get to that point once we look at the variation. The move I wanted to play, and I probably should have played in hindsight. And as a matter of fact, my opponent told me after the game, if you had played this move, I probably would have resigned, which was pretty encouraging. So I had the game right here in hand, and the move is knight F6 check. Now what this does is it forces my opponent here to do something about this knight. You either take it with the bishop, or you take it with the pawn, or you move the king out of the way, leading a nice little discovery on this D file here. So knight F6 check forces the exchange. Bishop takes F6, queen takes D7, rook takes D7, rook takes D7, bishop takes D2. Here's where I stopped my calculation because I didn't know what to do with this rook after these exchanges. I actually thought about putting the rook here on D1, so it'd be rook C D1. The computer, of course, suggests another move, which I don't know. Maybe if I would have played knight F6 check, I probably would have thought of it and looked at it. But since I didn't think beyond this, I said, what could I do beyond here? I can't protect this pawn anymore, but I am a rook up. But what can I do beyond? Where could I move this rook? Computer suggests, of course, rook C D6, rook C C7, bishop takes F3, and G takes F3. And probably after all of that, bishop would take that move and H4. Well, I don't know about that. Anyway, that would have been a continuation, but I didn't play that move. I played bishop H6. Now playing bishop a6 at this moment, I've looked and said, well, I'm keeping an eye on a rook and I'm keeping an eye on the knight here. So maybe this isn't a bad move, but this is pretty much, in fact, the losing move. This is where I pretty much lose the game from here on out. So queen takes d5, queen takes d5, rook takes d5, rook takes d5, bishop takes d5, rook takes a5, bishop takes f3, g takes f3, bishop f6, going after this pawn, and bishop c3. So if you look at the board now, as we were before, my king is a little exposed. I have double isolated pawns, and although this is pretty, this position is slightly better for white. I mean, slightly better for black. I couldn't finish it out. And after this next move of rook c8, it's pretty hard to exchange here on this square. So I tried to bring my king over to help the rook and the bishop out. King f1 and a5. If my opponent had have taken here, then rook c3, b takes c3, and I now will have 4 pawn islands, a double pawn, and my opponent, being much higher rated than me, probably would come down, move, probably f6, move his king down. So he probably would move this pawn to f6, not f5, move his king over to support his 2 connected pawns here. King e2, b4, a takes b4, a takes b4, and bishop takes f6, which was a mistake because now my rook is on breeze. So rook takes c1, bishop d4, protecting both the f2 pawn and the b2 pawn. Rook c2, check, king e3, and pretty much my game really goes downhill from here. Another prophylactic move to stop the advance of g5. e6, centralizing his king, e4, centralizing my king, f5, of course, check. King d3, rook d7. My opponent probably, instead of going rook c7, probably could have went b3, protecting his rook. Also, my bishop cannot attack this pawn. My king can't come over this threshold because the rook is there to attack the pawn. So that would be pretty much a great move by my opponent. But I was pretty much disheveled at this point. So, you know, and pretty much he was too. He was shaking a little bit because he's playing a pretty good game against a 9-14 rated player, and he's rated 21-28. But yeah, this game, the rest of the game is pretty much not really what I wanted to do anyway. I tried to keep this bishop and this pawn connected as much as I possibly could, and also keep it connected with this pawn here. So the bishop pretty much really wasn't in danger of being taken. No time in the game, really. But I needed it to be strong, and that was another devastating move because now he's taking away all my pawns. And here is the losing move. Probably instead of going bishop b3, probably should have went king e2, attacking the rook. Rook h3, bishop f8, attacking this pawn. Rook h2, king d1, rook takes h4, bishop d7, attacking the rook. So who knows? Anyway, after rook takes f3, bishop e3, and a simple move of f4, and boom, I lose the game, and here I resigned. And I shook my opponent's hand, tipped over my king, and have him sign a score sheet. No matter what you do here is pretty much losing. I lose the bishop after f4. Let's just say the computer here gives continuation of queen e2, Rook takes e3 check, king f1, king e4, keeping his king centralized and protecting everything, and escorting his passed pawn down. f2, g3, king e2, b3. Little bit of a prophylactic, so now the king can't really come up to this, can't go beyond here, and he won't be able to come over here to attack this pawn. So he's pretty much going to be limited to this side of the board. If he goes over too far, the rook will just come down and checkmate him. h5, pretty much just moving. h6, so now the king has to move because he can't move his pawns any longer. King e1, king e3, the black king has opposition over the white king. King f1, rook g5, a waiting move. He can't come over this way, he has to come back over here. So once he comes back over here, the king e1, the black king has opposition, and of course the next move would be mate. Rook g1, checkmate. So anyway, that's the game. It's probably one of my best games that I played. Granted that I was only playing chess for a couple of years. My rating was very, very low, and this guy's rating, he's an expert, 21-28. So this probably is the best game I've ever played, although I did lose. My next game, I will show you a win against a 2000 rated player. And like I said, sometimes I can beat him and sometimes I can't. I mean, I don't play them much because when you do these seeks and things like that, but this was an over the board game. So this was a like an overboard game. This wasn't a. In the next game, you will see it's going to be a correspondence online game. The 2000 win. So we'll see. Anyway, this is ChessRabbitt, and hopefully you guys learned something from this game. That I'm not as bad as players you guys think. I'm also going to start doing a lot of my losses. Like this is the first loss that I've actually put on, that I've analyzed on this site, and I'm going to be doing a lot more losses, and perhaps you guys can give me some pointers as to why I lose all the time. I think one person told me that I play a little too passively. I should play a little more aggressively. So that may be a good reason why I lose all the time. Anyway, ChessRabbitt. See you guys next time. ChessRabbitt out.